Oh, okay. All right, now we're good. All right. Well, it is getting to be Halloween time, and I was out looking around at people's decorations, skeletons, spiders, various other things that are out there to be frightening. And I always like to talk about the origins of Halloween when it gets to be this time of year, because I think it's a really interesting holiday. And the thing is, people usually think that it's just about being scary, or maybe just about, like, I guess, candy and, fun, or maybe it's evil. Like, some people think Halloween is evil because, it's all kinds of dark kind of themes. And the truth is, Halloween has a lot of layers to it. First of all, it started off being All Hallows Eve, which was a Christian holiday, something that a lot of people who have said Halloween is of the devil or it's evil or something like that, they actually don't know that a lot of the dark, scary traditions of Halloween actually are Christian traditions. And the reason for that is because you had All Saints Day, and All Hallowed Eve was the night before All Saints Day. So the general idea was that you would be having this holiday that would recognize and meditate on people and things that are holy and sacred and stuff like that. And before that, before this day that celebrated the saints, you would have a day that was devoted toward thinking about things that were dark, things that were more evil, things that were kind of the opposite of that which is sanctified and holy and saintly. It was this notion that you can't have a holiday where you meditate on redemption if you don't first contemplate what it means to be lost. And it ties in pretty well with that verse of scripture where Jesus says, I came not for the righteous, but for sinners. And you really can't appreciate blessings fully if you don't think about the contrast between the blessings and what it means to be hopeless, or what it means to be lost, or what it means to need redemption. And it's so true in life when we think about the stuff that really matters the most to us, the stuff that's really special. It's special because it's hope that appears in the absence of hope. And that's what All Hallowed Eve was about, which would become Halloween that we know today. But that's not really all. That's actually barely scratching the surface of what the holiday is actually about, because the truth is, the Christian church, I believe the Roman Catholic Church, if memory serves correctly, went out of its way to take pagan holidays and traditions and superimpose Christian traditions over the top of them. And that was a way for it to expand its reach and grow and find a bridge between Christian tradition and pagan rituals and traditions. And so you had Christmas, it was one of those, and Easter was one of those, and Valentine's Day is one of those. Most of the holidays we celebrate today are actually pagan holidays, which are built around the seasons, built around times of year, solstices, things like that. And then the church added its own lore on top of that to kind of tell people, now you need to believe in what we're teaching you, that the church wants you to believe. But you can continue to celebrate your more traditional indigenous kind of things too. And we'll just say that even though they were pagan things, they're Christian things now. And so you had that sort of a hybridization over time. But really, Halloween is the harvest festival. That's really what it is. And so it's all about that autumnal equinox, when you go from summer into fall, and you have the beginnings of what's going to become winter. And there's that realization that things that were are not anymore, and there's a sense of loss, and there's a sense of one period ending and another one beginning. There's the realization that nothing goes on forever and change is inevitable. There's a sense of gratefulness and a sense of maybe nostalgia, maybe a sense of loss. It's realizing, the days are still warm and comfortable, and yet summer is behind us now, and winter is right around the corner. And it's hopeful because you also know the winter's not going to last forever either. You're going to come out on the other side, and there's going to be a new springtime that's going to be born, but it's not necessarily going to be the same either, because next spring isn't going to be the same as last spring. Change always leaves something dead and buried and gone. And that's sad, and it's beautiful, it's terrible and grotesque, and also a natural part of life. And that segues into the part of Halloween where it's rooted in these kind of Celtic traditions, maybe Druid traditions, where it was all about this earth-centered understanding that we came from the earth and we are going to go back to it. It's that understanding that there's a circle of life we're part of. And in Western society, modern society, we tend to think about this upward track. You're just continuing to try to get more stuff. You're trying to get higher status. You're trying to get a better rank. You're trying to level up, and then eventually, you're going to become sort of, if you're lucky, immortal, because you get really rich and powerful and you have all the goodies and stuff like that. And you can, if you're lucky, you can pull the wool over your own eyes and pretend that you're not a mortal person that's going to be eventually going back to dust. And yet the truth is we're all on our way from life to the grave, and you can't get around that. And that's part of how life works. So there's a certain part of this that's all about understanding the circle of life and not being afraid of the circle of life. At the core of the jack-o'-lantern, which is this whole thing of you carve a pumpkin or a turnip or something, and you make the face and you put the candle inside there. And of course, we all know what a jack-o'-lantern is. But that came from the tradition of a legend that said that there was a man who deceived the devil, and so he was cursed to be in a in-between sort of a place. It was kind of like a purgatory of the soul. He couldn't go to heaven and he couldn't go to hell, and he was just doomed to spend eternity wandering the earth, neither in heaven nor in hell. And he was given just a single coal to burn with a small flame inside the jack-o'-lantern, which would be his only light to guide him through his eternal purgatory of being a lost soul without any place. And that whole tricking the devil thing is actually interesting, because I think it was probably a derivative of the older story of Sysyphus, who was said to have tricked his way into escaping the underworld, and that would be a Greek mythology legend, I believe. In any case, he was punished for deceiving the god of the dead. And so he lived, but he was eternally plagued with the compulsion of wanting to always push a boulder up a hill. And so he's always pushing the rolling stone up to the top of the hill. And once he gets it close to the top, the boulder will always roll back to the bottom, and he'll be stuck in that perpetual loop of trying to roll the rock up to the top of the hill. And that's what he does, always on that treadmill of life, trying to push the stone upwards, only for it to roll back down so he can do it all over again. Again, it's the theme of deceiving the devil, trying to cheat death, and then being in a weird in-between place where even if you did get what you're trying to get, you don't actually find peace, because peace comes from understanding we all have our place, we all have our time, we all have our season, and sometimes it is appointed for us to die, just as it is appropriate for us to live for a season. Think about all the people that go and get Botox and all that stuff, you know, to make themselves look younger. And they do all of these different things to try to be youthful. And I'm not saying like none of that is ever a good thing, but sometimes people take it so far. They're always trying to find a way to not ever grow old, but then in the end, everybody does, you know? So at what point is it a pointless thing to try to buy your way into immortality, when the truth is we are going to all return to the earth just as we came from it? You know, naked we were when we came out of the womb, naked we will be when we return. So there is this lesson of finding peace by facing our mortality, by facing death, by not being afraid of those dark themes, by understanding that they are too part of life as it ought to be. It's interesting how in American tradition, we have separated Thanksgiving as its own holiday from Halloween, which is its own thing. And so we kind of have two separate harvest festival sort of holidays, and they both are loosely derived from the same root, if you will, which is the changing of the seasons. But if you think about it, they're all one and the same, even though we tend to celebrate them at two different times. So it's suitable to just take into consideration that Halloween is also kind of a time for focusing on gratefulness. Kind of like how the Central American cultures and Mexico, I believe, will celebrate the Day of the Dead. And that's a time which is for honoring the ancestors, honoring the people who went before you, and making sure that people who've passed away can be celebrated and honored in our memory today. So the Day of the Dead would be a celebration of life. Even though it seems like it's a little bit morbid, it's not really about death. It's about loving those who are perished today, by remembering them as they were when they were alive before. Thankfulness is an important part of facing our mortality. It's realizing we have this stewardship to live up to, honor the spirit of those in whose footsteps we follow. I was out going for my walk earlier, and it's close enough I can go to the cemetery where Sam Walton is buried, and I like to go look at that grave of Sam Walton. And, you know, I always look at that and I think about how you have this man who was really, really accomplished and driven, and probably in most ways a more accomplished, talented, determined person than any of us will ever be. He managed to do so much with the life that he had when, I think at the age of 46, he decided he was going to do the whole Walmart thing. And that huge company started with this one guy who had a dream, who wanted to make a difference in the world, and he really did make a huge difference in the world, which continues to echo long after he passed away. And when I look at that grave of Sam Walton, and I look at the parking lot lights of the old Walmart home office in the distance behind where he is laid to rest, I think about this feeling of stewardship, this humbling sense that we are given the opportunity to take what went before us and make the best of it for future generations, to find a way to be an ambassador, to find a way to focus on paying it forward. And that's something that is a responsibility of great weight and privilege to be able to do that. So, jack-o'-lanterns were a thing that people would make, partly because they were a homage to the jack-o'-lantern guy story that I was talking about a little bit ago. The guy who was cursed to be a wanderer. Like, that legend is what kind of made the jack-o'-lantern what it was. But people would light these lanterns, and the folklore about this was that if you lit the candle and you put it on your doorstep, that would be a good way to dispel evil spirits. And when you think about this jack-o'-lantern with a candle in it sitting out on the porch, and you think about everybody in a community doing this, and you think about the whole trick-or-treat tradition, which came from that notion of people going out and begging, or maybe doing some kind of a little performance in order to see if they could get people to give them something, or maybe people would offer a prayer for the dead in return for being given some sort of a gift of food or shelter or something. So tied in with all of these traditions is this generosity and the premise, the theme of lighting a fire, of shining a light, of coming together as a group of people to light many, many little flames. And to understand that when we all work together to shine a small light, that it can be a great force for dispelling the spirit of evil in the world. And when we give to others with a spirit of generosity, it can be a way for us to fight evil with service. And then when you segue into more of those themes of Thanksgiving, and you finalize it by having a capstone of understanding that when the harvest is over and when the final part of fall comes to an end and when winter time is upon us, when the seasons of our old life are past and we have to face that final curtain of understanding that what used to be isn't anymore, we can do that with a sense of peace and with a sense of completion and wholeness. We don't have to look at life as a thing that is broken. And so there's this dichotomy, the yin and the yang, the realization that you can look at death in the face, and that does not have to undermine your sense of life. We can have setbacks, and that does not have to mean it's the end. We can fail, and as long as there is someone else out there who will carry on that eternal flame, then it's okay if we as individuals can't do everything, because we as a whole can continue on if we honor each other, both living and dead. So yeah, Halloween is like a family-friendly candy collecting holiday if you're trick-or-treating with the family. It's a time for doing spooky, random, creepy things if you like going to the Halloween store or whatever. It's a holiday that's filled with weird contrasts and conflicting elements because it can't quite figure out whether it's a fun tongue-in-cheek thing or if it's dark or if it's a Christian thing or if it's a pagan thing. It's really just all of the above. And yet it's also a profoundly beautiful thing if you dissect all of those different elements and you think about what they potentially can mean. It doesn't have to just be about ghoulish, frightening Halloween decorations or giving out candy. It can be symbolic for so much more. It can be symbolic of meditating on themes of redemption by thinking about the darkness from which you came. It can be about remembering that the best way to dispel evil is through service. It can be about finding peace in the face of mortality by understanding that you don't have to do it all, and being mortal is not a problem. It's just part of life. So we don't have to be afraid of the unknown. It can also be a time for thinking about the changing of seasons in our life, realizing that when one age ends and a new one begins, and we cross a threshold, we don't need to be afraid because we can trust that Providence will guide us through all of those unknown things. And it can be a time for focusing on love, because there are stories that have been finished when other people's seasons have come to an end, sometimes prematurely. But we can honor those people by continuing to live in a way that does them appropriate tribute. And as long as we live our lives in a way that is honorable and kind and gracious and thankful, then in a way, those who went before us never will die. They just live on through the stories that we tell. So, if there is anything else you could learn from all of this, it's the power of diversity. That there's all different people with all different views on life, with different religious backgrounds, with different cultural backgrounds. And every generation, every iteration of the human experience has added something to that lore, which eventually evolves into new traditions for the future. And they are different traditions. Sometimes they're conflicting traditions, just like Halloween. Hard to interpret, and everyone has a different take on whether they like it or not, or how exactly they choose to interpret the experience. But life would be a dull thing if we didn't have those experiences. If we didn't have all of those things that bring us together and make us contemplate our often confusing place in the world. So whatever you make of Halloween, wherever you go with it, remember that life is a blessing, and make the most of every season of your life. You never know when it's your last day, and the truth is that most of the people who die unexpectedly or in their youth, they don't really see that coming. So just remember, it's not about being morbid, it's just the truth. None of us are assured tomorrow. So let's make sure that today is a good day, because life is too short, too unpredictable, too filled with changing seasons for us to afford to have any bad days. So, good day to you. And as always, good luck on your adventure. Till next time. Thanks so much.